Live. Muted.
There we go. All right, we're unmuted and we are live and ready to go, folks. What is happening? It's MMA Weekly's UFC Fallout, UFC 259 edition. Jim Grieshaber, Jeff Cain, powered by CBD Emporium, featuring Level Select CBD. 50% off right now with the code MMA50. That's right, 50% off of CBD Emporium and Level Select CBD products right now that'll change your life. Pain-free, stress-free, anxiety-free, sleeping like a baby. And that's kind of a misnomer sometimes because not all babies sleep. As a parent, I can tell you that. But I can also tell you that you're going to love these products from CBD Emporium and Level Select CBD. They have the tinctures, they have the creams, they have the roll-ons, everything you need to live a pain-free life. And you can get 50% off right now with the code MMA50 at StayInTheFightMMA.com. StayInTheFightMMA.com. And Jeff Cain, we are staying in the fight. As always on Sundays, man, we're dragging ass, hanging by a thread, but what a week, especially this week. So much work, so much content, so many shows, and such an exciting night last night. Man, after these Saturday night shows, I'm drained anyway, but last night, and we talked before the show today, man, where do you start? You have to start with the main event. You have to start with the upset, quote unquote, but those of us in the know, Jeff and I, picked Jan Błachowicz. In fact, I went 8-2, and I was all excited about my picks until I realized Jeff went 9-1, and then I went, shit, it doesn't matter if you come in second. It doesn't matter if you're 9-1 and you come in second, because second place, as Pat Riley says, is the first loser. Anyway, Jeff, the main event, the upset, Błachowicz beats Adesanya. Izzy handles the loss with class. The co-main event, the greatness of Amanda Nunes on full and prominent display. Again, there's nobody close to her level. The co-main, the bantamweight title, the disqualification, the illegal knee from Peter Yan that hit Aljamain Sterling. So many great storylines. I mean, Islam Makhachev lived up to all expectations last night. The first fight of the night between, Thiago Santos and Alexander Rakic was amazing. Dominic Cruz with a vintage performance. Kyler Phillips off the charts. Joseph Benavidez gets beat down for the third straight time, this time by Askar Askarov, who's terrific and now a title contender. And then a tremendous performance by Kai Kara France, who escapes a submission and finishes with a walk-off knockout at the end of round number 1. And oh, by the way, the early prelims were all finishes. What a night of fights at UFC 259.
Yeah, the night kicked off with the five consecutive finishes in a row there, and then it kind of carried through. And then, of course, that's the way those preliminary fight cards play out, because the inexperience, some of those fights end up being mismatches, but we didn't know they were mismatches until we put them in there together. And then as we go up to the ranked guys, and there were 17 of them on this card, and females, the fights become closer, and some decisions got mixed in there. But crazy night of fights. A little bit of jumping around in the divisions. Not crazy, though. You would think with that many ranked fighters on a fight card that there would be a lot of jumping around. And actually, I don't think there's going to be a ton of jumping around after this, Jim.
No, and we're going to go through the rankings in a few, Jeff, and we're going to start with the main event. But one thing you did say on the show last night, and we thank all of you, we had way over 300K. I think we might even be close to 4 now viewers, and it just keeps climbing on this one. But you said you hope the bonuses went to the fighters on the early prelims because they need the money the most, but they actually brought it on a huge fight card where they get the opportunities of their lifetime, where it's headlined by a potential double champ, and you got the female GOAT, and you got all this Dominic Cruz, you have all this attention on this fight card, and the up in 3-2 in a submission out of these 6 fights on the early prelim. So Kennedy and Ulberg got the fight of the night, and then Kai Kara France, who was actually on the prelims, but the first fight on the secondary prelims, and Uros Medic with the bonuses. So your wish came true, my man. But it started with the early prelims, and it just kept going all the way through the main event. But I love it when fighters take advantage of the opportunity.
Am I back? I think I'm back. Are you back, Jim?
Yeah, did you drop too?
Yeah, I dropped out of here like Peter Yan need me in the head. Yeah.
If anybody does two things at once on this crappy Wi-Fi, it drops. It's crazy. I don't know which one it is, you, me, or the mothership, but we got to do something. It's the 21st century. Come on, these companies need to step up and give us better service. There, rant over.
Well, it can be inconsistent.
But the young guys did. They stepped up. Just keeps winning. He had a brilliant game plan. I loved what Israel Adesanya said in the post-fight press conference last night, where he just gave all the credit to Jan, called him classy, said he had a great game plan. But Izzy, at the same time, undeterred, still very confident, said, hey, look, it isn't like I got the crap beat out of me. I showed myself pretty well. He just was better tonight in that fight and doing the things that he needed to do. Jan Błachowicz with big takedowns about halfway through rounds 4 and 5. Won him the fight. And the one thing I will say, both guys showed out. They were both great, both incredibly classy. Adesanya right up there with Dominic Cruz after Cody Garbrandt in terms of, the best post-fight, defeat speeches. But the thing that stood out the most to me in this fight, and Dana White's right, and it wouldn't be a press conference if Dana didn't get upset about something, these 10-8 rounds, man, there's no way that fight was 49-46. There's no way on God's green earth. It was not that much of a dominating performance by Błachowicz. And Dana's right. They're handing out 10-8 rounds like candy lately.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it looks like Jan won 4 rounds, and they gave him one of the rounds 10-8, I guess is how you get that scoring.
How could you ever have gotten a 10-8 round in that fight? Did you ever think you'd see that?
No. I mean, I guess it was the 5th round where he kind of took him down early and had him mounted at the very end. I don't know. I don't. I mean, the scoring didn't matter in that fight. It didn't. I mean, they got the score. They got the winner right. I think Jan did win 4 of the 5 rounds, and they got that right. But yeah, I don't know about the 10-8 rounds. Usually that's a one-sided affair. We didn't used to see a lot of 10-8 rounds. I mean, you'd see a guy get almost finished in a round, and it would still be a 10-9 round. Yeah, man, I don't know. I'd have to go through all those fight cards and see, or all these scorecards and see. In the main event, no, I did not see a 10-8 round in that fight.
No, but what a great performance by Jan Błachowicz. I mean, it wasn't the fight with all the fireworks that we thought it was going to be. It was very technical. Both guys extremely strategic. It kind of reminded me of Woodley Wonderboy too. Not quite that uneventful, but because of the first fight and because both guys had so much respect for each other, speaking of Woodley and Wonderboy, there wasn't a lot of action, not a lot of fireworks in the second one. Well, last night, both guys threw a lot. Both guys threw a ton, Jeff, but, you go back and you watch it, and I did this morning. Błachowicz threw so many punches where Izzy just made a miss with the head movement. Both guys did, where the punches or the kicks grazed them. Nothing did real damage. Neither guy was all that marked up because those punches and kicks were grazing them. And that just speaks to how well they were prepared, how ready they were for this fight, and how good they are. I mean, that was as high a level as you're going to see. Those are 2 of the top 10 fighters in the UFC. And I hope to see in this. Wonder what your thoughts are on this. I mean, Błachowicz go from here. I mean, 14 pound for pound, 14 going into that fight, and he just beat number 3, and he beat him pretty easily, convincingly, to the point where no one felt like the outcome was in doubt toward the end of that fight. So where does he go on the pound for pound list? He's at 14. I mean, there are number 1 contenders, number 2 contenders who are above him.
Yeah, I mean, it's because of their resumes and what they've done in their division. And then Jan was a newly crowned champion. I don't know if Izzy really drops in that, because it just depends on how you look at the pound for pound rankings. Because I look at them as its skill set, right? If all of those fighters weighed the same, what skill set's going to win? Which is why Izzy's so high up. And I don't think the loss to Jan is going to do anything for that. And I don't think a win over a middleweight does a lot for Jan in the pound for pound rankings. He might go up a little bit over some of those number 1 contenders because he's defended his title. But it's just hard to say where beating somebody in a division lower than you is going to help you out a lot on the pound for pounds. But I could see some people dropping Izzy a little bit. I don't know. I probably won't because I don't see that as a big deal that he lost to the champion in the 205-pound division. You know, that was a no-lose situation for Adesanya. If he goes up there and he wins the belt, he's a two division champion. If he loses it, he's still undefeated at middleweight. He's still the middleweight champion. But I don't think I think it would have done a lot for Izzy had he won that fight on the pound for pound list. But Jan beating a middleweight, I don't know. I hadn't even thought about the pound for pound rankings until you just brought it up. I'm probably not going to drop Izzy any, and I'm probably going to move Jan up a couple of spots. I'll have to see who's in front of him, because there are a lot of guys who are not champions and are number one contenders who are probably former champions that are on that list that Jan could probably pass now that he's got a title defense under his belt.
Yeah, and I'll give them all to you right now. And I think Izzy's going to drop below Kamaru and maybe Stipe and go to 5. I don't think he'll drop below Volkanovski. I don't know. I could be wrong, but I would think that Kamaru Usman and Stipe, who are 4 and 5, will go over Izzy, who's 3, and maybe even further on that list. But I also think that you've got Max Holloway at 8, not a champion. You've got Poirier 7, Holloway 8, not champions. And then you got Gaethje, Whitaker, and Ngannou 11, 12, 13 with Jan at 14. And somehow, some way, Conor McGregor's on this list at 15.
Well, like I said, I think that people put a lot of stock in, Conor went up in weight classes and won those belts. But yeah, I don't think that, but those other guys behind him haven't, don't have those accolades. I don't know I don't even know what mine is. I'd have to look at it. I just don't see how losing, because we can say all that these people are in front of him. Usman's not going up and fighting out of his division, and I don't see how that should hurt Israel Adesanya. He went up and lost to the champion in the higher division. I don't see how that knocks him down anywhere, especially whenever you're not seeing anybody else in that list do those things.
It's interesting, and you do have a vote. Jeff has a vote, so I'm interested to see what happens. I think Izzy should drop. I think he should drop pretty far. I think he should drop 3-4 spots for sure. I think that if you're not a champion, Błachowicz is above you. I don't care if you're Holloway. I don't care if you're Poirier. You're not champions. Jan Błachowicz on this run has got to start getting some respect. The pound-for-pound list, he's behind Ngannou, Whitaker, and Gaethje. He's going to pass them. Petr Yan just lost. He's going to pass him. So he's out of the list. I think Jan drops out of it from number 10, even though the way he lost didn't technically get beat. And the chat room's doing really well right now. So I want to get everybody's thoughts. What do you guys think the pound-for-pound list should look like? Where should Izzy move to? Where should Jan Błachowicz go to? I'm not saying he's better than Max Holloway. I'm not saying he's better than Dustin Poirier, but I'm also not saying he's not, because that was a great performance against a fighter who everyone, almost, except for the two of us, almost everyone thought Izzy was going to win. Almost everyone would have said, hey, Izzy might be the best fighter in the UFC. We can stop with that right now. Almost everyone said, hey, he could be the guy to beat John Jones. We can stop with that right now. And these are not shots at Izzy. I still love Izzy, but when you're being talked about in that way, Jeff, you've got to deliver and you've got to be on that level. So he's not, to me, a top 3 pound for pound. When you're looking at Khabib, you're looking at Jones, you're looking at Usman, you're looking at Stipe, the greatest heavyweight of all time, somehow is still ranked number 5 in pound for pound. But I think it's we're splitting hairs here, but people love these fans love this topic of fighters to be there. And the one thing I really do agree with you, Jeff, first of all, Khabib's retired. Dana said Khabib laughed at him when he said, how about September last night? But Khabib's retired and he's at number 1. But you said Amanda Nunes and Valentina should be on this list, and there should be one list. They would be in there too. So it's a lot of fun to talk about these things, even though it really has no bearing on anything.
No, I'm just not going to drop Izzy because he had the balls enough to go up and fight above his weight class. The way I look at it is Izzy a more dominant champion at middleweight than Usman is at welterweight, or that these other guys are? Because, like I said, I cannot hold that loss against Izzy on the pound-for-pound rankings, because the pound-for-pound rankings usually just hypotheticals, how will this guy? It's all hypotheticals, except Izzy actually made it into a reality. He put it on the line, and I'm not going to penalize him for putting it on the line and losing to the light heavyweight champion. And at the same time, I'm not giving Jan too much credit for beating the middleweight champion. What Max Holloway's done in his career is Jan doesn't compare to that. If you ask me, it just doesn't compare to it. Not yet, anyway. So I don't know, man. The pound for pounds, that's like the most irrelevant ranking of all the
Yeah.
rankings because it's just so hypothetical. And I feel like that the women should be on there because if the women are on there, Amanda Nunes is number 2, right? Maybe even number 1.
Jones and Nunes, I would say 1 and 2. That was right. Jat Henri says, hey, 1 Khabib, 2 Jones, 3 Usman, 4 Figgy, 5 Błachowicz, 6 Izzy. And someone else, Polyglot in the making, Lucas says, Jan should drop in weight, beat Izzy, take his belt, and be the pound for pound. There's no way he's going to make that weight. But I will say this, and someone also wrote, casuals think Khabib is GOAT. And I agree 100%. I agree 100%. Khabib Nurmagomedov is not the GOAT. He's not even close to GOAT Mountain. If you're looking at a Mount Rushmore, if you're looking at a top of the tops of all time, yes, he's undefeated. But when you're looking at what Anderson Silva did, at what Georges St-Pierre did, at what Amanda Nunes has done, at what John Jones, who in my opinion is the best, and even what Stipe has done at heavyweight, he's not in that rarefied air. He's just not. I mean, he doesn't have a win over Tony Ferguson. He did beat Conor, but Conor had taken time off, and we don't even know how great Conor was now because now he's lost to Poirier on top of it. He's already lost to Nate Diaz, and everybody who's great beat the crap out of Nate Diaz, including Masvidal. So where is Conor really on that list? In my opinion, I just don't think that he's made the commitment to MMA fighting, and maybe he could have been, but to me, he's nowhere near. So I do think you're right. It's an irrelevant list, but it's a fun list to talk about. So let's see. Khabib is a weight bully, never tested himself against people his own size. He can't be considered P for P because if everyone was the same size, he would be smoked. Wow, people love this chat. See, the pound for pound list is completely irrelevant, Jeff, but everyone's like all over this chat's moving like it's a pay-per-view right now.
Yeah, if everyone was the same size, Khabib out wrestles everyone. So I'm just going to throw that out there right now. If everybody's the same size, Khabib's skill set still gets him to the top. I don't know about the other ones. I agree with the GOAT. Khabib is not the GOAT. But as far as skill set, if I could pick, I mean, just look at it that way. If you could pick the skill set of any fighter in the world, and what skill set is that going to be? I'm probably going to go with Khabib. Probably going to go with that skill set. But like I said, the pound for pound is just all subjective. And then the GOAT is really subjective, right? John Jones is the GOAT. I don't think that there's really an argument to be had. And then George St. Pierre and the Andersons and the Amanda Nunes, I consider all of them to be higher than Khabib on the GOAT, the GOAT train, I guess.
Stipe,
but
right? No Stipe.
I mean, it's hard to say, man. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say because of Khabib's undefeated record. That's always going to stand out. I don't know. I don't know where I would put him considered with Stipe because the heavyweight, like I said, the heavyweight division is so hard to stay at the top. Everybody loses in the heavyweight division. It's so hard to hang on to that belt, and so they kind of get shuffled around those rankings. It's very rare that you see a heavyweight at the top of the pound for pound rankings because it's just so hard to hang on to the title.
Which makes what Stipe's done 6 times even more remarkable. So some guy named Ronald Drump is calling me a fool. And I mean, that's ironic, right? He names himself Ronald Drump and calls me a fool. But he said, Khabib isn't a GOAT, question marks. Come on, fool. And no fool. Go, I'm a fool. But I mean, I don't put him up there, man. And then I got someone calling me a legend. Then I got someone telling me to shut up. It's great. This is what you do with the chat. But I do, Khabib is great. I'm not saying he's not one of the greatest fighters. He's undefeated, for God's sake, right? But if you look at the fights he's fought and the fighters he's fought, and then you look at Silva's list, and you look at GSP's list, and you look at 3 generations of fighters that John Jones has cleaned out, and you look at the greatest of all time who have all been murdered by Amanda Nunes and not just beaten, slaughtered, except for Valentina. When you look at that, you can't help but put those fighters ahead of Khabib. And that's not a knock. I mean, so many people love Khabib so much. It's not a knock on him, man. It's just the truth. And if you can't handle the truth, you can't handle the truth. I'm sorry.
Well, Khabib is one of the greatest fighters ever to step inside the octagon. Khabib is the greatest lightweight champion the UFC's seen. But whenever you start comparing him to those other GOATs, those other people that are in that conversation, he doesn't stack up with Amanda. He doesn't stack up with John Jones. He doesn't stack up with George St. Pierre. And he doesn't stack up with what Anderson Silva was able to do in his prime. And I would go so far as to say he probably doesn't stack up past Matt Hughes. But that's not an insult to Khabib. He came around at a time where the division was in that in between phase. That there was people leaving and people coming, and Khabib came in. It's not Khabib's fault. He beat everybody they put in front of him, but the people that he beat were not Shogun. They were not Lyoto Machida. They were not Rashad. They were not all of those people. They were not Matt Hughes with George St. Pierre. They didn't go up and beat and in the middleweight championship like George St. Pierre did. So look, everybody kind of takes it as an insult, right? Whenever you say Khabib's not the GOAT, dude, I'm not insulting him. I'm just comparing him to the GOAT. And if you want to be in the GOAT conversation, we have to compare your GOAT resume against the other GOAT resume, and his GOAT resume doesn't hold up.
No, and this guy thinks putting all caps is going to make me keep reading his stuff. Obviously a big Khabib fan, but it's funny when people say Khabib dominated Poirier, but when you're talking about a GOAT, and the one point that I see in here that's valid, Jones cheater, no PEDs on my list. There you go. And then someone put Matt Hamill as the GOAT. That's pretty funny. But I really do think, Jeff, and I want to read some of the chat stuff here, so bear with me for a second. So, okay, Lockdar says GSP is the GOAT. Khabib just after him, no PED failure on my GOAT list. And then someone says, who else is the GOAT? You look at stats to call someone GOAT. No, Anderson went 1-8. All right, we're talking about prime Anderson Silva, and if you want to hold all those losses later, yeah, you probably can't be the GOAT when you have all those losses later. That's why Anderson's not the GOAT, but he's way up there. And then you say, hey, are you judging primes or are you judging longevity? Are you judging Terrell Davis? Or are you judging Emmett Smith? You know what I mean? There's so many different things you could do when you're talking about the greatest of all time, which is why Jeff said at the beginning, it's completely irrelevant because it's so speculative, but everyone loves it. Let's see. Ronald Trump is banned. Let's see. Jeff Cain. Hold on, Jeff. I just want to read some of these because everybody's chiming in, and I want to get these guys. Jeff Cain, most casual dude on YouTube. Rick Deckard. Let's see. Picograms is the GOAT. I like that. Shut up, Jim. Jim is a fool and a hater. No, shut up, Jeff. Jim is a good guy. Jeff shouldn't be allowed to talk about MMA anymore. Khabib mauled everyone. How could you put Jones at 1 at all? Let's see. 29-0 pure dominance. Let's see. These guys are speaking. I like this one. Dom Sugar. You guys are speaking facts. These casuals crack me up. This is fun, Jeff. This is a lot of fun. Let's see. I want to get to like 3 or 4 more here. Khabib pulled out against Prime Tony and Prime Cowboy. There's that. Anthony Menzano wants to know, Jeff, would you say that Ken Shamrock is one of the greatest of all time because of the fact when he started out in MMA and the UFC, they didn't have weight classifications? That's a good question. I like that one from Anthony. And it's for you.
He wasn't
so go ahead,
winning.
Jeff.
He wasn't winning then.
He wasn't winning then.
I would give it to Hoist. Great. Yeah, I'd have to give it to Hoist at that point.
GOAT.
Yeah, but I do think that the commenter makes a valid point. If his list is different than other people's because he has the standard of no PEDs. And if you are going to say that no PEDs, then that does remove Anderson, that does remove John Jones, and then you're sitting there still with George St. Pierre and not Khabib. So Khabib's one of the greatest fighters ever. There's no question. You're not going to find anybody to say that. As far as skill set goes, he's got one of the toughest skill sets to deal with in the history of the sport, which is why everybody's so high on Islam, right? All I'm saying is that the lightweight division lacked the amount of legends and the amount of people, big names and stuff that Khabib could beat. Khabib did everything he was supposed to do. It's not his fault that all of the previous era were gone whenever he got there. That's not his fault. But at the same time,
Conor Poirier and Gaethje doesn't make you the GOAT, right? Conor Poirier and Gaethje are his biggest wins. I'm sorry, that doesn't make you the damn GOAT. I mean, you people are crazy. You're crazy if you think he's the GOAT. You're crazy. You're out of your damn minds.
Well,
his 3 biggest wins are Conor Poirier and Gaethje. That's not GOAT.
Yeah, the pound for pound argument's different than the GOAT. The GOAT's the greatest of all time. Who is the greatest of all time? Amanda Nunes and John Jones. And then you have to work your way down from there. You have to work your way down from there. And now when we're talking about the pound for pound, then I think it comes down to skill set, which is why I'm not dropping Israel Adesanya. I think Israel Adesanya's skill set is enough to be undefeated as a middleweight, win the middleweight championship, and to take the light heavyweight champion to a decision. That's a pretty damn good skill set.
Yeah, and someone says GSP beat drunken Bisping with one eye at the end of his career and no defenses. GSP defended against everyone. And the one knock against George is that people think he lost the Hendricks fight and lost the Condit fight. And there's some validity possibly to those arguments, but he won, right? So let's see. Khabib never been cut, never been knocked down, undefeated. I get it. You guys don't have to tell me how great of a fighter is. He's not the GOAT. His biggest wins are Conor, Poirier, and Gaethje. Those are great fighters, but it doesn't make him the GOAT. Look at GSP's wins, and Jeff talked about Jones' wins. Stipe Miocic has 6 heavyweight title belts in his collection. 6. Name me a heavyweight who even comes close. Stipe, in a division where guys just never hold on to the belt, has done an incredible job, but he did lose to DC. Right? And he did lose to Stefan Struve. So you can't be a GOAT if you lost to Stefan Struve. No offense, Stipe. Love you. But I believe it's John Jones. Now, he goes up to heavyweight and wins that belt too and beats Stipe or Ngannou. There's literally no question. So I'm looking at this right now, and now the Khabib fans are going, well, Khabib doesn't really care anyway. He has millions. This is not what it's about. It's actually hilarious to see what these Khabib fans say. I mean, the guy's unbelievable. He's one of the greatest of all time. But, I mean, it's just unbelievable to think about this and the things that people say about, Khabib. But I think that Khabib is amazing. We're not denigrating him, but I'm putting Jones number 1. I'm putting GSP and Silva ahead of him. I'm putting Amanda. Amanda's got to be number 2. And that's a perfect segue into Amanda Nunes. Look, just laid waste to Ronda Rousey and Miesha Tate and Holly Holm and obliterated Cyborg. I mean, she's beaten this 6-foot Megan Anderson is a killer. Amanda Nunes just knocked her senseless, took her to the ground, and almost snapped her arm off. And she said her game plan was to finish her on the ground. Amanda Nunes is the only fighter with a case for the GOAT other than John Jones. That's it. Two fighters.
Yeah, as far as active fighters, that's it. That's it. There's nowhere else to go. There's no other names you need to bring up. That's it. It's John Jones and Amanda Nunes as far as active fighters go. And if we're going to go back and consider all the fighters who've ever fought, then you got your GSPs and your Andersons that throw in there. And yes, Anderson failed drug tests late in his career. He took losses. It doesn't change the fact that he just obliterated the middleweight division and held the middleweight division hostage for, I don't even know. It felt like a decade, man. I don't know exactly how long it was, but it sure felt like it was a decade. And so Anderson's there. It just could be, like I said, the interesting question is this: if Khabib weighed 205 pounds, would he beat John Jones? That's a question, pound for pound and stuff, and and the arguments and the hypotheticals. I say he would, but that's completely in fantasy land in an alternate universe.
Yeah, and Anthony, Jim, do you agree with me that when looking at the GOAT list for UFC, you would put guys like Royce Gracie above GSP? I mean, that's a tough one because Royce was amazing, right? I mean, you're talking about a different era, a different set of rules, big-time killers, huge guys who everyone thought were going to kill Royce Gracie, and he made them all tap. And he's a legend in the sport because you talk about Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. What's a more famous name and a more famous brand in the sport than Gracie Jiu-Jitsu? I don't think I put him above GSP, though, because, I mean, just look at – I mean, guys, come on. Think about guys who were St. P. his run, Matt Serra. And someone just ripped me in the chat saying that I'm an idiot because I said you can't be the GOAT if you lost to Stefan Struve. I mean, John Jones didn't lose to anybody, so obviously he's the GOAT anyway. But when I look at George St. Pierre and his run atop that division, and then he comes back and beats Bisping, and I know Bisping wasn't the greatest champion, but he did have the belt, and he did beat Rockhold and finished him. That was a great win for Bisping. Bisping's fought everyone, has a lot of huge wins. But when you look at GSP, right, he lost 2 fights. He lost to Matt Hughes and he lost to Matt Serra, right? The Serra was one of the biggest upsets in history. But GSP came in at 5-0, and he lost those 2 fights. So from the time he lost to Serra to fall to 13-2, the guy won 13 straight fights. 13. He beat Hughes. He beat Koscheck, who at the time was huge and a rising star. Matt Serra, he got revenge for that one. John Fitch, BJ Penn, Thiago Alves, Dan Hardy, Josh Koscheck again. Jake Shields, Carlos Condit, Nick Diaz, Johnny Hendricks, Michael Bisping. Not the list that John Jones has, and not the list that Anderson Silva has. But Anderson Silva had a lot of losses at the end. You can argue this stuff all day. This is what's carrying the show right now. It's kind of funny, Jeff, that we got sidetracked and off the rails here on the GOAT list. But when you look at Izzy trying to become a double champ, I think you got to put Henry Cejudo near the top of this list right now. He's also an Olympic gold medalist, the greatest combat sports athlete of all time. The fighters who were double champs at one time, look, if you want to rate them, Connor's win over Eddie Alvarez and Jose Aldo, DC beat Stipe, never beat John Jones to win the light heavyweight. I'm just crossing them off GOAT Mountain right now, the double champs. But what Henry and Amanda did, even better than those other two guys. So I think that it just goes to show you how hard it is to do what Izzy tried to do last night. I give him all the respect in the world, and this conversation started because I think Izzy should fall way down on the pound-for-pound list, and Jan should come way up. And we opened a whole can of worms here.
Yeah, and I disagree. I disagree with that. But look, you can go back and look at all the. Look, I mean, I think people are downplaying that George St. Pierre took out Matt Hughes. Matt Hughes was the GOAT. He's the greatest welterweight champion of all time. So let's not act like that's not as big of a win as beating any of the greatest fighters ever to step foot in the octagon. That Matt Hughes is absolutely one of the greatest fighters to step foot in the octagon, and George St. Pierre beat him. And then ran with it. George St. Pierre ended the Matt Hughes era and then said, screw you, tough fighters. You're not going to come into this division either. And then he continued. And then now, this is my problem with the two division champions, because a lot of them are handpicked, right? I mean, George St. Pierre wasn't going to come back until he says, oh, wow, Michael Bisping got the middleweight championship. I've got a window here. I've got an opportunity. I like the way I match up with him. He goes and beats him and then says, I'm not fighting. I'm not defending this belt. Thanks for the accolades. I'm gone. And you see other fighters do the same thing. Conor McGregor went up, never defended any of those belts. And so
Henry just
I don't know.
Well, he did defend once. He defended it once. But
yeah.
He defended 25 once. But now someone says to me, hey, if Stipe lost to Stefan Struve, even Anderson lost 4 fights before his win streak. Bro, your arguments are not consistent. This is the pool. Well, dude, go on Wiki again and tell me about the 4 fights that Anderson lost. They weren't UFC fights. Okay? I'm talking about UFC GOAT. Anderson Silva did not lose 4 UFC fights before his streak. So go on Wiki again, look at his 4 losses before he was in the UFC, and then come in here talking that crap.
Well, I mean, It doesn't matter where they were. That was a different time and a different era. Because you're going to have losses of people in Pride and the WEC and different organizations at that time that were every bit as big and legitimate as the UFC. But look, the loss before the UFC Anderson suffered was to Yushin Okami, where he upkicked him and knocked him unconscious, and got disqualified because he upkicked the guy and knocked him out while he was on the bottom. Like I said, this is. I mean, people love the pound for pound rankings and they love the GOAT argument, but I don't think that they make a good case. They don't make a good case. I don't care if you've won 2 titles. We aren't talking about BJ Penn, although he won 2 titles. So, and I feel like a lot of it's handpicked. Do I feel like Izzy handpicked that fight last night? Yeah. Yeah, I think he looked at Jan and says, man, this is a great opportunity for me. I think I can win this fight. Did not work out for him. But he had no intentions of going up and actually defending it over and over and over again, which is what makes Amanda Nunes the anomaly in all this. She's the only one that's really defended both belts after winning them. You don't see Cejudo did one of them, but he didn't the other. And so it just depends, man. It's so subjective. I mean, my God. I don't even know what to say. Amanda Nunes and John Jones are the GOAT.
Picograms matter.
They do. They
I love it,
do.
Man. I mean, it's just heavyweights should be at the top of the list because they can take heavy shots. Anthony says Jones shouldn't be up there because of the steroid stuff.
And I think that's a legitimate argument. I think that's a legitimate
but
argument.
What John Jones tested positive for was never. I mean, clearly he never even looked like he was on anything. I mean, it isn't like he was all jacked up, and some of the stuff that he was on was a little different, and it was a tainted supplement supposedly. But I mean, I get there's some points there, but it's funny, man. But when you look at the guys who Silva beat, and look, talking about skill sets, Anderson Silva was untouchable. No one could get near him. No one could touch him until Chael, and he found a way to beat Chael. But Okami, Vitor, Chael before that, Damian Maia, Forrest Griffin, Dan Henderson, Rich Franklin, I mean, twice, Chris Lieben, who was in his prime then. Those, and no one could touch Anderson, so he was incredible. But it's a fun argument, man. But I mean, look, right now is Khabib. I don't even think Khabib should be number one in the pound for pound right now. I mean, I don't. I mean, Jones has been out a lot. Jones is moving up to heavyweight. He's at number 2. You know, it's just, I don't know. It is what it is. But it's a lot of fun to talk about. And the one thing that we can't deny, Jeff, you've said it 100 times, is Amanda Nunes' greatness. I mean, what she did to Megan Anderson last night, dude, it just, I mean, she's untouchable right now. She is as dominant as any fighter we've ever seen at this moment. And she actually looks better. And she said in the press conference, she feels better at 45 than 35. She has destroyed everyone at 45.
Yeah, she doesn't have to cut the weight. You know, and Amanda's not a small woman, and she doesn't have to cut down to 35. And so she probably does feel a hell of a lot better. And she looks really good at 145. But yeah, man, Amanda's so dominant that she's really run out of people to fight in 2 divisions. You know, not only did she clear out 1 division, she's cleared out 2 divisions. And we jokingly say that she's cleared out a gender, and that's only halfway a joke. She really has almost cleared out half the women's weight classes in the UFC. There's no argument about how great Amanda Nunes is. And when we go back, she's 2 wins away from having the most consecutive wins in the UFC, you know, or as a champion. And so, you know, we're lucky to be seeing Amanda Nunes. I'll say that. Do I think that about because she's setting so much history for women's MMA and for overall MMA and UFC records that have no gender. Yeah, Amanda's greatness can't be said enough. And yeah, I would put Amanda Nunes right up there at number 2 or number 1, depending on how you feel about John Jones. If I were to do a pound for pound list that wasn't segregated between male and female.
Yeah, and she only has 1 UFC loss. She lost in her first pro fight at Prime MMA Championship 2 to a girl named Anna Maria. Alexis Davis beat her in Strikeforce by TKO. Sarah DiLelio beat her by unanimous decision in Invicta. And then Kat Zingano TKO'd her. So, I mean, obviously she's got 4 losses. The Zingano one's the one stain. And then someone wants to know, why is no one talking about Demetrius Johnson? Because he was in a weight class where almost anyone got a title shot. That's my opinion. Almost anyone got a title shot for a while.
But they weren't beating Demetrius. You know, Demetrius just has that one defeat. Demetrius Johnson is absolutely one of the greatest fighters. Amazing. Yeah, I mean, there's no question as far as skill set goes and what he was able to do, because he basically cleared it out until Henry. There was nobody in that division. Mainly because he cleared it out. You know, and that was a guy who fought at higher weight classes. You know, the weight classes weren't around for Demetrius, and then they came around and they dominated him. I agree that Demetrius should be in that conversation. You know, 100%. Demetrius Johnson is one of the greatest fighters ever to step into the octagon. But because it was new and that division was new, it kind of got muddy a little bit. And then he left the UFC. You know, after losing the belt. But I agree, Demetrius Johnson's in there, man. I'm a big fan of Demetrius Johnson. He's from right here in Kentucky originally. So, you know,
yeah, and he lost to Henry, and that was a close fight. I mean, if Demetrius had won that decision, no one could have argued with it. But he also, remember, lost to Dominic Cruz. He lost to Dominic Cruz in the UFC Bantamweight Championship all the way back in 2011. So Dominic Cruz is
flyweight
near the top of that. Yeah, he's a flyweight, but he took the fight and he lost it. That's why I don't give Izzy credit for losing the Yan fight. I don't. It's not less of a loss because he moved up in weight, in my opinion. He lost. A loss is a loss. I don't care. You know, you took the fight. You could have won the fight. You lost the fight.
I disagree. I mean, a loss is a loss. I mean, if I lose to John Jones, that's a different loss than losing to Ken Shamrock. You know, like I said, people can say whatever they want, you know, while they sit comfortably in their divisions and not go up and fight those guys. But you're not going to sit there comfortably in your division and say, hey, he lost. Well, yeah, but he took the fight. You know, I mean, I just disagree with somebody going up. How are we going to punish the guy for going up and trying to make history?
No, but I
and
mean, even people in the chat, this one dude's writing, he fought Cruz at bantamweight. So what? He fought the fight. He weighed in.
well, there was no
him.
flyweight division. There was no flyweight division then.
Okay, so but then you take away Valentina's losses to Amanda because she's really a 25er. If you want to start doing that, then you say all Michelle Watterson's losses don't count because she's an atomweight and they don't have an atomweight division. I mean, you could do this crap all day, but they have what they have. They fight who they fight. I mean, Henry went up to 35 and beat Marlon Moraes. So you're going to give him all that extra credit? It is really hard to do that. Amanda went up to 45 and beat Cyborg. It's been done. If you're the greatest, you should do it. If you're the great, Anderson Silva went up and won. If you're the greatest, you do it. If you're not, you don't. That's just part of the criteria. Not a knock on Demetrius.
I don't think you have to go up. Yeah, I don't think you have to go up to be the greatest. I think those are novelty fights, right? Those are just novelty fights that don't really have a hell of a lot of bearing in the overall picture. If you ask me, you're just that. Israel Adesanya is still the middleweight champion. And so what happened last night has no bearing in my mind on the pound for pound rankings at all when it comes to Israel Adesanya. I
disagree. You and I are 100% opposed on that one, and that's good. That's styles make fight.
Well, I just don't see the logic in saying, hey, he lost to a guy that was out of his division, so he should drop below people.
He went up and took the fight and tried to be a double champ. But you can't, on one hand, you can't give him credit if he wins and becomes a double champ, and then say that you don't take away from him if he loses. Because if he had won today, everyone would be saying, "Oh my God, he's the greatest of all time. He has 2 belts." Right? But you're not one of them. I'm saying that, like, if you're gonna give him credit for winning a second belt, you can't give him the excuse for losing to a bigger fighter because, like I said, others have. Even GSP went up a weight class and won. The great ones, the greatest ones, find a way to get it done. They find a way. Connor went up to welterweight. He went from featherweight to welterweight.
Those are hand-picked people. I mean, Connor's literally, like I said, when most people go up, those are hand-picked fights. So whenever you talk about people who've gone up a division and actually done something, then you're talking about, I don't know, Anderson Silva did go up and make Forrest Griffin look terrible when Forrest Griffin was a recent former champion in the light heavyweight division. Mm-hmm. So there's that. And you had Cejudo come up, and you've had BJ Penn who went up, and those aren't handpicked. They're fighting long-term champions when they did that.
Cejudo wasn't handpicked.
I just said him.
Back-to-back wins over the bantamweight champion and the guy who they thought would beat him for the interim belt. He destroyed Dillashaw and he beat Marlon.
I'm just saying the Division II champion in the world doesn't get diminished because they go up and lose to the Division I champion. That's just ludicrous to me. And so if we're going to do that, then I guess I'm going to start holding it against people because they didn't go up a weight class. So no, Usman, you don't get to pass him because you didn't go up.
No, I'm not saying that. We can
go in circles all day on that.
Yep. No, and I'm not saying that. I'm just saying a loss is a loss. You went up, you took the fight, you lost. Period. Demetrius lost to Dominic Cruz. He did. He lost. Right? GSP didn't lose
Demetrius
at 85.
Didn't have a choice.
Anderson didn't lose at 205. Jones is going to heavyweight. DC went up to heavyweight and beat Stipe. I mean, there's a lot of guys who have gone up and won. Amanda went up and won. Valentina went up and won a lot of fights. So it happens. But I think it's a great argument. I think it's a lot of fun. But I just don't want to take away from the fact that I am not disrespecting Israel Adesanya. I'm pointing out how hard it is to do this, how hard it is to add that second belt. But you cannot give credit on one hand if he were to be a double champ and then not give, not take away on the other side, on the pound for pound side, because he lost. Jan Błachowicz is a better fighter than Israel Adesanya. I don't care what weight class they fight at. Jan's a better fighter. He proved it last night. They weighed in 5 pounds apart. You watched that fight over. Was he really that much bigger? No, he wasn't.
Jim. Did they show up in the octagon 5 pounds apart? That's an illegitimate
But does
argument.
anybody do that? My friend Aaron Simpson used to fight at middleweight, and the guys were 20 pounds heavier, so he dropped down to heavyweight. Because fighters who weigh in almost every week, Jeff, are fighting at different weights because one gains more than the other after weigh-ins. Every week happens.
Not like that. They're not like that.
But they were 5 pounds apart on weigh-ins. 5 pounds.
I know, but whenever you say that, you know that they didn't enter the cage 5 pounds apart. You know, last night they were not 5 pounds apart.
Okay,
so whenever you say they're 5 pounds apart at the weigh-ins, that to me is kind of you're ignoring the fact that actually in the fight they were not 5 pounds apart.
But no two fighters ever weigh the same in the octagon on fight night, ever.
Well,
Never.
that's like I said, that's talking in circles. They were not 5 pounds apart.
How is that talking in circles? No one ever weighs the same. Everybody's body's different.
Well, what the hell does that have to do with them not weighing the same in the fight? They did not weigh the same last night in the fight, and so to present
but no
it as
two fighters ever weigh the same in the fight. Did Megan Anderson and Amanda Nunes weigh the same in the fight? Hell no.
Like I said, that's ridiculous. Yes, man, they weighed the damn same. They were within a pound of each other. But we're talking about people who are within. They were not within 15 pounds of each other last night.
Okay,
I would be shocked.
Did Paulo Costa and Yoel Romero weigh the same?
It's whataboutism, man. This is whataboutism. Like I said, whenever they didn't weigh the same, and I'm not going to present it as if they did weigh the same, or that they were within 5 pounds of each other. I'm not presenting it that way because they weren't. They weren't.
Okay, so none of the smaller fighters wins in pride, right? Because they beat the bigger fighters. I'm serious, man. How can you say it on one hand and then not the other? I don't understand.
I'm not the one saying it. I'm saying, yes, man, there was no weight classes back then. And you're saying I'm giving people credit. Izzy didn't win the damn fight. He got no credit for that. For that. So you don't take away from a guy who goes up a weight class. You're saying he should drop all these spots because he lost to a guy that's not even in his damn division. It's kind of the reason why we have divisions is because of that.
He should drop a bunch of spots because he lost. He went up and lost. He took the fight.
I disagree.
If he had both belts.
I disagree.
He moves down.
And on Tuesday, he will not have dropped a lot of spots.
I bet you he drops 4 spots, $100, 3 spots.
Go ahead, Jim.
I bet you he drops 3 spots, Jeff. What do you guys think in the chat? Is he going to drop? How many spots should Izzy drop?
God damn.
I love these people who put all caps like it's going to make their point better. But I mean, look, you take the fight, you lose the fight, you don't get credit. It drops you. A loss is a loss. You get dropped.
Yeah. Okay. That's what you believe, and I think that's ridiculous.
DC dropped when he lost to Stipe, and he was going up. DC dropped, right? He was going up.
What?
The pound for pound.
No, I don't think that he did. I think he stayed right where he was, and then in the rematch, he retired and was removed from him. DC was never the top pound for pound.
Only Khabib stays number 1 when he retires. Only Khabib, and Dana's still trying to beg him back. This is a great fun argument, man. I just definitely think, some people are calling me stupid. Someone's calling you delusional. I'm a crackhead, someone says. I never became a crackhead. That's one thing I can say with confidence and pride. I never became a crackhead. That's one thing I can say for myself in life. But I think it's fun. I think this is great. There's nothing better than this. Talking fights, having fun, debating who we think is pound for pound, who would beat who is the best. It took us forever to talk about Mighty Mouse, Amanda Nunes. Yeah, but she lost to so-and-so. Stipe lost to Stefan Struve. It's kind of fun. But what we're not doing is talking about a crazy night last night. I mean, Jan and Sterling with a great rematch. You had an excellent point earlier, Jeff, before the show, where you said, hey, these guys are breathing a lot of life. And what Jan did gives a lot of more publicity and more sizzle to the bantamweight division, which is loaded right now. And now it's definitely, with the rematch coming up, Aljamain never wanted to win it this way. Petr Yan obviously didn't want to lose it this way. But, people thinking he's a dirty fighter, Dana saying it was intentional. When you're talking about Amanda's greatness, is he trying to move up and become a double champ and not doing it, and being great and classy at the end, but somehow no one wants to say that it's a loss because it wasn't his weight class. But Petr Yan and Aljamain Sterling, that was the most controversial thing that happened last night. And we haven't even talked about it yet because UFC 259, with all the title fights and with all the shit that we had going into it, Jeff, literally had so many storylines and so much crazy shit happen that we're almost an hour into the show and we haven't talked about Jan and Sterling yet.
Yeah, the belt changed hands, and I'm not sure that they shouldn't look at that in the future because I'm not sure that it should have changed hands in that situation, considering you lost all of the rounds up until that point. But yeah, the belt changed hands. Jan's stock doesn't drop any. Sterling's doesn't rise any. Everybody saw that fight. He was clearly losing it, and then he got kneed in the head. So now we get to do a rematch. The UFC's happy. Jan's happy that they get to do a rematch. And honestly, Sterling should be happy. That's a title fight that he's going to be in that otherwise he might not have. It didn't look like he was going to be in.
Yeah, what would you do, Jeff? That's a great point, man. Would you make it a no contest and nobody leaves with the belt? How would you handle that? Because if you think Sterling shouldn't be the champ, would they do you think they should look at the scorecards and go, hey, man, this guy was clearly losing the fight. The belt shouldn't change hands like it would have if Lionheart Smith against John Jones could have done the same thing. The doctors made the choice. It was ultimately the ref's decision, but it isn't like Sterling said, hey, no, I want the belt. And it wasn't his choice either. But what should happen there? Should it be a no contest and you leave with no champion?
Yeah, it would be a no contest. Yeah. Or no, I'm not even upset that you call it a DQ loss. What I'm saying is that Aljamain Sterling sitting there with a belt in a fight that he didn't win a single round in, and that's why it's weird. Should Jan have been lost the belt? Yeah, he should have. I'm just not sure Sterling should have gotten it. And so it's weird. But then I'm not necessarily wanting to open up the can of worms to where we're looking at scorecards. If it's an unintentional foul, if it happened in the second round, then it's just a no contest. If it goes past the third in the title fight, then we can go to the scorecards. That did not go to the scorecards because they ruled it as not an accidental foul. But I just have a hard time looking at Aljamain Sterling as the champion in that division. Jan's still the champion in that division, if you ask me. Sterling has the belt, but he's not the champion. And the way they're going to build that rematch, it's going to be just that. Jan's the legitimate champion. You're not really the champion, and that's the way that whole fight's going to be built.
Yeah, and people saying Aljo won an Academy Award. One dude saying that it's MMA, not football. Aljo should be kneed again for laying on the floor like a bish. I mean, dude, get on your knees and let me fucking knee you in the head as hard as I can, and you tell me if you're deserving of an Academy Award. I mean, you just fucking stupid. I mean, just
Sterling's the only one that knows that. Look, that was a hard knee. And whether or not Sterling could have continued is really irrelevant. He's the only one that he couldn't have continued early, on in that 5 minutes in. Look, the only one that knows that is Aljamain Sterling. But am I going to continue to fight after you just kneed me in the head as hard as you could? Because that does cause damage. No, I'm probably not. I'm going to be like, you know what? We can do this rematch or whatever. I'm not the one that committed the foul. I'm not knocking, now we've made, this is just weird. It's victim blaming, right? Now we got people blaming Aljamain Sterling because Jan kneed him in the friggin' head.
I mean, come on. That was go back and watch this shit, guys. It was a brutal knee. And then I thank God for our guy. Where is he? The Dark Cloud NC. He watches every show. Appreciate this guy. Jan's idiotic coaches told him to, let's see, the chat just is going so fast. Jan's idiotic coaches told him to throw the knee, and in the heat of the moment, Jan did it. That's what happened. And he was looking at the hands, not the knee. So obviously the guy's not going to piss away his belt by doing it on purpose. And I got a little heated during the stream last night, calling it dirty and this and that. And, look, it's a downed opponent and it's a knee. But I think that to call Aljo an actor and to say it's an Academy Award, dude, he's a G. He's a G. He's fought everyone, beaten everyone. He was so upset he took the belt right off, man. You guys are delusional if you're thinking Aljo.
Well, I just have a hard time blaming Aljamain Sterling. Look, that was a clean knee. Like, clean as a knee can land on your head. And it knocked Sterling down. It's not like he was faking then, man. And everything after that is irrelevant to me. You just can't blame Aljo for what happened there. I don't consider him the champion, and that's not an insult to Aljamain Sterling or accusing him of anything. It just feels dirty to give a guy the belt who wasn't winning a single round in the fight.
Maybe not, but he might have won one. Now, you wouldn't give him round one because it was close, and people are giving him round two. I don't know, man. I just think, too, that Piotr Jan's not the champion. If you want me to be 100% real, beating a 900-year-old Jose Aldo coming off a loss, moving down a weight class, does not make you a champion either, in my opinion.
Well, where wins don't matter.
Well, no, it does matter, but, Aldo should never have been in that fight. Sterling should have been in there before him then. Let's be real. Jan did not beat a legitimate champion or a legitimate number one contender to become the champion. Triple C relinquished the belt, so Jan didn't beat him. Not his fault, right? So Triple C retires. He beats Aldo, who's coming off a loss in a new weight class and got the title shot. I'd rather see Conor McGregor get the title shot now than Aldo in that situation. That was a joke. That was a joke that Piotr Jan fought Aldo for the title. That was almost as bad. And look, the Brooklyn thing happened, and they had no choice because Holloway couldn't make weight as a replacement but Khabib fighting Raging Al And it worked out great because Khabib's been an incredible champion. But I said the same thing at the time about Khabib because he beat a legitimate number 10 guy to win the belt. That's not a championship fight. Jan versus Aldo was not a championship fight. I just don't understand that. So I understand that Aljamain's not the legitimate champion, but I believe Petr Yan was never a legitimate champion. And I'm glad they're fighting again with and maybe Aldo shouldn't have the belt. But damn, I just think that sometimes this sport becomes a mess, Jeff, and it's really nobody's fault. But to say Jan was a legitimate champion after beating Aldo in a new weight class coming off a loss is just man.
He won the fight and was well on his way to winning last night. I don't know what a legitimate champ is. Apparently, I don't know what that is. The guy has the belt. Look, but getting back to Aljo, you can't blame Aljo for what Jan did. I'm not going to. I just don't like rewarding Aljo for what Jan did. I have no problem with the way the fight. It should have been stopped. Aljo should not have continued, even if he could have. I'll say that. I'll go that far. Even if he could have continued, he should have said, hell no. That was such a blatant foul. And we can run this back. But you can't blame him for what Jan did, But that's just what I'm uncomfortable with is rewarding him for what Jan did. But that's the rules of the sport. So now Sterling is the champion. And he's going to get that rematch, and maybe he'll do better, man. I think it's better for both of them because I think Sterling had some success early that Jan's going to look at and be like, okay, I can approach that differently. And I think that there's areas in that fight where Sterling needs to improve, particularly maybe his cardio because it looked like he was slowing down as that fight wore on. So, I mean, both of them could have, Sterling could have dodged a bullet there. I get where people are saying that. But also, there was another round left, and who's to say that Aljo wouldn't have just knocked Jan out? We don't know. We don't. Yeah, we don't have
the other way too. But I agree with you, Jeff. Petr Yan was completely taking. I mean, he was really taking control of the fight. He was really taking control of that fight. That fight wasn't going to last that much longer, in my opinion. And I'm not saying Jan's not a great fighter or couldn't be a great champion. I'm just pointing out the obvious here. But I think the biggest losers, and I mean, Jan's a big loser because he lost his belt, but the biggest losers besides that are the guys waiting for a title shot because now that's held up for a while and we don't know about, medical suspensions or anything yet. So that means Sandhagen and then Dillashaw coming back in. If he wanted a title shot right away, that's not happening anytime soon. And Sandhagen's going to be even more pissed because he's got to wait a while. And, in all fairness, you shouldn't have gotten choked out by Aljamain. You wouldn't have to wait so long, but that's the fight game. And you got a loss. You came back. He's dominated twice in a row since then. But, the division's going to be held up for a while because now there's a rematch. There are all kinds of ramifications from these fights. That's why we call the show UFC Fallout.
Yeah, Sterling was transported to the hospital last night to be checked. Dana White at the post-fight press conference says everything came back fine, and they are going to do this rematch as soon as possible. So it really comes down to when the fighters, how far out they feel, because they just cut weight. They just went through a 4-round fight. And they took some damage, so you're going to definitely want to give them 6-8 weeks off, and then they're going to want 6-8 weeks in a training camp. So yeah, we're talking about at least 3 months down the road before this rematch happens. But in that meantime, I don't think it slows Dillashaw up. Dillashaw was going to have to take a fight first. It maybe slows up Sandhagen a little bit, but I don't think this is bad for the division. I mean, I jokingly said before the show, I think Dana White should give Petr Yan a bonus. Because now this division has something to talk about. Now
it has something to talk about. You're right. You're 100% right. I think too, Jeff. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, when Dillashaw comes back, we're going to either have the established champion, or we're going to have Sterling, pull an upset. But I feel like it helps everybody in that division out because that's what everybody's talking about today. Everybody's talking about Israel Adesanya wasn't able to do it, and they're talking about what the hell was Petr Yan thinking when he threw that knee.
No, and I'll tell you what I want to see right now, and you tell me what you think, guys. In the chat, too, I love this. This is amazing. I would do this for 10 more hours. They won't let us, but I would. I just want to say this. If you're going to have Yan and Sterling the rematch for the title, Sandhagen's in no position to make demands. I'm sorry, Corey. Nothing against you, dude, but the way he's been talking, you got choked out in a minute and a half by Aljo, and you beat Frankie Edgar and Marlon Moraes, and Marlon's 2 in a row now. So those are good wins. Not denigrating anybody here. Everybody just calm down, but you're in no position to call shots and say you're sitting out for a title fight. If he tries to pull that shit and I'm Shelby and Maynard, I'm like, peace out, dude. You're getting skipped by everyone. So what I want to see right now, because Rob Font deserves this, I want to see Rob Font versus Corey Sandhagen, and I really, really, really want to see, you ready, Jeff? And we talked about this last week, Dominic Cruz, TJ Dillashaw 2. That's what I want.
Yeah, I don't know what they're going to do with Dom. I think that Dominic's going to have the biggest move after this event. I mean, he could honestly jump all the way up to like 5th, in front of Aldo because of what Dom's been able to do in that division. And all of those guys up till Aldo are all, Edgar and all those guys are all off losses, and a few of them several losses. Cruz, it depends on how people want to do him. But I mean, he literally could jump all the way to 5th because of his past accomplishments, and his losses in this division are only to the top, right? And in one of those losses, the guy's not even there anymore. So it's going to be interesting where Cruz falls in here. I don't know what I want to see with Cruz. Maybe you do the Dillashaw. I wouldn't do the Dillashaw rematch right now. I would actually do Dillashaw and somebody else as a number one contender.
Dillashaw Sandhagen would be good,
and let them fight. To be the number one contender.
But if you do Dillashaw Sandhagen, Jeff, then Rob Font gets screwed. Maybe it's Font and Munoz. I mean, that would be a good one, right? Font and Munoz.
Yeah, I'm not worried about who's getting screwed. I'm trying to figure out what's going to be the biggest selling fights, and you don't do Cruz and Dillashaw unless it's for the title. So you got to give Dillashaw a shot to get up there. In my opinion, you don't, just because of the rivalry and everything. So you kind of, right now, I'm keeping Cruz on the back burner and seeing what happens up here. Even a rematch with Garbrandt, depending on what Cody does. And so, but you still got Cruz sitting there, and that's a big fight that you can sell. And then Cruz fighting for the title with anybody's big fight because of Cruz's story. So, I mean, Cruz is kind of the weird anomaly in there, because
Munoz has beaten Font, and they're both ahead of Cruz. Munoz has beaten Font, and they're both ahead of Cruz. I say Cruz Dillashaw too because it's a great fight to make, and the winner's right in the title hunt, because it's good to have Cruz and Dillashaw in the title picture. I also, and someone put it in the chat, Jeff, Cruz Aldo. Cruz Aldo would be great, man. 2 legends. I mean, I'd love to see Cruz and Aldo. I'd love to see Cruz and Edgar, but I'd rather see Cruz and Aldo.
Well, I mean, I think that's a fight that Cruz would take. I mean, like I said, Cruz is at the end of his career. So he's going to look for the fastest way possible to a title fight. And the UFC knows that Cruz is the biggest name in that division, right? Him and TJ and Cody. And so it just depends on how they want to use him. I give Dillashaw one fight and throw him into a title fight immediately after he gets the one fight. And then depending on how that title fight goes, that's whenever I work in Cruz. I either decide Cruz is going to get a title fight against an old rival, or Cruz is going to fight Garbrandt, or you throw Cruz that fight to keep him active as an Aldo. They've got options with Cruz. I think Cruz winning last night actually opens up the top of that division that was kind of getting closed off a little bit because TJ's not back. We don't really know what's going to happen with Cody. And then now the championship fight is kind of all messed up. And so I feel like Cruz adds some options for the matchmakers, and you could put him against an up-and-comer. You could put him in there with a veteran. You could put him in there into a title fight, or you could give him somebody like he just had who's lower ranked in the top 10 and see if he can get a win and maintain. They've got a lot of options with him. They don't have to throw him in a title fight.
No, they don't, but I mean, I like what GDG says in the chat, Jeff. GDG, HHH, except for the last part. Cruz Aldo, TJ Sandhagen, and then Font Munoz 2. Font's 3, Munoz 8. You want to see Font moving up. I'd love to see Font fight Cody. Rob Font, Cody Garbrandt, and then you do Sandhagen and TJ, and then Cruz and Aldo. But I do want to see Cruz and Dillashaw now because one of them will be out of the title picture. And I agree with you, Jeff. You might not want to burn that right now. You might want to let things play out a little bit more. But this division is jacked, man. But with Jan and Sterling, the belt's going to be off the table for everyone for a while. You're right, at least 3 months after what happened last night, and you hate to see a fight end that way. I mean, look, that fight was clearly going Petr Yan's way. He started to dominate that fight. You could argue that from the middle of round number 1, Aljo hit the 2 flying knees and a couple of big punches early and got the one friggin' takedown he got the whole damn night. After that point, Yan completely dominated Aljamain Sterling. No one, I don't think, could argue that. So that fight plays out the way it was going. Aljo is eliminated. The fight would have been Sandhagen and Yan. So Sandhagen's got to have Dillashaw under that scenario. They used to be training partners. They've talked about fighting each other. So I like that matchup. I like Dillashaw and Sandhagen, but you're eliminating Dillashaw from title contention in his first fight back. If you throw him in there against Sandhagen and he loses, you're eliminating Cruz if you fight him put him in there against TJ and he loses, or Dillashaw if he loses to Dom. But that's why you do these things, so you can eliminate people from the title picture and get a real champion. To have Cruz fight Aldo at this point would be a good fight for both guys. It would draw a lot. It's a fight night headliner. It's a co-main on a pay-per-view. I mean, that one makes a lot of sense. I would love to see Dominic Cruz and Jose Aldo.
Well, I mean, good matchmaking creates a lot of options, and storylines are what sell fights. And so that's what I'm saying is when you look at Cruz's storylines, where's his storylines with? It's TJ and with Cody, or anybody for the title with Cruz just because of his story. And so I feel like the UFC thinks about storylines because that's how they're going to sell these fights. Ultimately, that's how they're going to do the embeddeds. That's going to how they do the countdown shows. It's all storylines, and Cruz's storylines run through those guys. And I don't think you want to mess that up because that storyline works. If TJ comes back and loses his first fight to Sandhagen, you can still do Cruz and Dillashaw. You can still do that fight just because Cruz just has the one win now after coming back. So I don't know. I'm not into eliminating contenders. I'm into giving title fights to guys that have earned it. But I kind of like once you're in the top 5, I feel like the UFC needs to be real careful in who they put you against and when they put you against them, because at that point it's all just storylines.
Yeah, and I wonder too. Like let's keep it on this topic, Jeff. I love it, and we'll for. But I would say, fight the winner of Costa and Whitaker. Would it be the winner of Darren Till and Marvin Vettori? Till, who he hasn't fought yet, and Vettori, who fought him better than almost anybody in that division. Him and Gastelum. So who would be next for Izzy at middleweight?
I mean, you see what Izzy's trying to do. He's trying to go Till. He's hoping Till wins. I mean, that's the fight he calls it out. He says it publicly. And I think it's because of stylistically he likes that matchup, right? Till's not going to take him down. He's not going to have to put up with that in that fight. And so
be a fun fight.
I think that Izzy's going to have some say in it. He's one of the. There's not all champions have say in who they're going to fight. Izzy's probably one of them that does, or at least a little bit. He has some influence in that, and so I think it's just going to depend on who wins those fights. But clearly, Adesanya wants to fight Till. I want to see the Vettori fight. I would like to see that rematch but Vettori does not have the name that Darren Till has, and so I understand that. Vettori's name is built on. He gave Adesanya a really tough fight. That's kind of what he's known for. So I feel like the UFC needs to build Vettori up a little bit by getting him some quality wins over recognizable names. And then you keep reiterating, this guy gave Izzy a tough fight. And then I just don't know if he's there yet. I feel like Till's the bigger name. And that's probably why Izzy's calling him out. And
but I'm going to piss people off again. Darren Till is as much of a title contender as I am right now. I mean, legitimate. I mean, the guy's lost 3 out of 4. Woodley and Masvidal beat him. He wins a split decision over Kelvin Gastelum, and he gets smoked by Whitaker. How the hell is that guy because only Izzy putting his name, and Izzy did this against Yoel Romero coming off losses. I mean, I think it's got to be the Whitaker Costa winner because those guys have both lost to Izzy, and I think Whitaker's going to beat Costa pretty easily, honestly, and I think it's got to be Whitaker. He never got a rematch. He did look pretty good in that first fight against Izzy, got caught with a couple counters, but he did land some shots. He's a great champion. I don't see how Darren Till would ever get that over, Robert Whitaker. I can't understand how people, it's just Izzy calling his shots. I get it, but Darren Till's not a title contender in my opinion.
I mean, it's not about that. It's about the biggest name. And so you look at that division, and Till does have a good name. No, I don't think that Till deserves a title fight at all. Israel Adesanya is his best friend in all of this, right? Because he keeps putting his name out there. Till should be sending Adesanya Christmas cards for sure. But you have to look at it that way: is who's the most popular fighter, who's the most well-known fighter that Izzy can face. Hardcore fans are going to want him to fight Vettori, but I don't think that he has a big enough name for the UFC. I don't think they get their money back by throwing him up there in a title fight. You've got to have somebody who's built up. Now, Whitaker's built up. It just for some reason, Izzy's not saying Whitaker. I don't know what's going on with that.
Think of what the wine sponsors will do if it's Paulo Costa. They'll make so much money off of wine companies that have never been sponsors before. Think of the opportunities there, Jeff. Like literally.
Yeah, I mean, but look, with the world opening back up, because this is also a caveat. Because right now, Dana, the governor of Texas said Texas is opened up, and Dana pointed out last night, yeah, no, it's not. But as the world we are going to open up this year, right? And it's not just going to be the United States; it's going to be other places as well. That's going to determine some of these people who get title fights, because of course you would do Whitaker and Izzy in Australia, or New Zealand, if that's the way it works out. You'd jump on that. Yeah, you would jump on that. And so a lot of things are going to factor into who gets those title fights, and a lot of it's going to be popularity and who's going to sell the most tickets. And unfortunately, that's how come Till can slip in there right now.
Yeah, what about Francis and Kamaru and Izzy on a card in Africa? What about, if Khabib does come back, it's a card in Russia? I mean, you're right. Conor and Ireland, these are huge opportunities. But, Jeff, also, I look at light heavyweight right now, and I think it should be the Whitaker-Costa winner for Izzy. But at light heavyweight, Dana said unquestionably it's Glover Teixeira. And, I mean, I'm not in love with that at all. To me, it's meh. But, I mean, Glover earned it. I can't say that he didn't. I mean, every time they count this guy out, he works his way back up. And I'm not hating on him. It's just that fight does nothing for me. It doesn't make the hair on my neck stand up one bit.
No, but, I mean, Glover's been around a long time, and people like Glover. I mean, people for some reason, people like Glover, and I think it's because he's a lot like Jan, the champion. He's just that working man's fighter. He was a guy who has been on the cusp of being out, and then he's fought back, and now he's right there for a title fight. And so I think people get behind that. Do I think it's a good fight? No, no, I don't think that's a good fight, but that's probably going to be the fight that happens. But you know what? If that fight happens in, say, Brazil, then that fight all of a sudden makes a hell of a lot more sense. And so I think that there's a lot of variables that's going to come in, particularly this year as we start to open up, that you're going to see people fighting people that you might leave you scratching your head until you look at the geography of the venue, and then you're like, oh yeah, because if I take Kamaru and Ngannou and Israel to do an event in Africa, then I'm lining up with fights that I could almost guarantee they're going to win, right? I'm trying to build the sport in that area. I want your stars to win. I want them to look good. I want everybody to yell and scream and buy the next pay-per-view, and so you could see a weird matchup there. But that would be Adesanya Till, right? That would be perfect.
Yeah, it would be perfect. And think of Amanda in Brazil. Think of, Valentina. Think of Zhang in China, which I know they really have been wanting to do and been working on that. Those are incredible opportunities. And Jeff, as we continue with who fights who next, we know the lightweight division. We don't have any answers as to who's going to fight who. But Islam, Makhachev, dominating Drew Dober. Everybody's got future champ written all over him, specifically calling out RDA. But then in the post-fight, he was all about Tony Ferguson. All about Tony Ferguson. Obviously Khabib trained for Tony a lot, and he did it with Islam in his camp. So calling out Tony Ferguson is a strategic move for him. I don't know if that's who he gets, but they're not going to, he's going to jump over Ray Janal, Diego Ferreira, and Kevin Lee for sure. Maybe he jumps Paul Felder at 10. I doubt they put him in there against Felder or Beneil Dariush. I doubt they give him Dan Hooker. Maybe Dan Hooker, maybe RDA, but I don't think he gets Tony Ferguson. Do you?
That's a tough one, man, because Tony's in that case, man. And I mean that in the most loving, I mean that in the most loving way, right? I love Tony Ferguson, but Tony might, after hearing Islam wants this fight, Tony is the kind of person who might be like, yeah, I want that fight. I think that's a terrible idea for Tony Ferguson. I think that's a great fight for Islam because he sees where Tony is, right? Now's a great time to be fighting Tony Ferguson, especially if you're lower in the ranks. You get to build your name off of him. And for Islam, a win over Tony puts him immediately in the top 5. And so I think it's a smart call out for Islam. What I'm worried about is that Tony might actually take this fight, and I don't think it does anything for him. I think he only has downside of taking this fight. But because Islam and Khabib trained together for so long, and there's that animosity between Tony and that fight camp, Tony absolutely is going to take this fight. You know that he will. So it's going to come down to the UFC, what they want. I think it was a smart call out to Islam because Tony seemingly is on the decline, and he's still a huge name.
Jeff, I'm a genius. Where's Dana White? Call him. Get him on the phone right now. I figured out how to get Khabib back. Are you guys ready? I'm going to get Khabib back for Dana White. Dana, pay me. I'm going to get him back. Here's what happens. Islam, right? Here's what happens. Conor McGregor fights Poirier. Conor McGregor beats Poirier. Khabib tells Dana, the only way I'm fighting again is if Conor beats Islam. And if Conor beats Islam, then I come back and avenge my boy and fight Conor again. There's Khabib's return right there.
Conor going to lose to Islam too. That's going to be terrible. That's going to no. I don't think Khabib's coming back. And I think that he's setting up Islam to kind of be his protege replacement in a way. If that makes any sense.
He is.
And so I feel like Islam, and I think that's the Tony thing too. It's about closure, right? Khabib and Tony never got to fight each other, but they prepared to fight each other like 5 times, I think, if I'm correct. And Islam, I think it gives Tony closure, and it gives Khabib a little closure through Islam. I don't dislike that matchup. I dislike it for Tony Ferguson is what I dislike. And I think it was a smart call out by Islam. That's a bigger jump in opponent than RDA. RDA is also a good fight to call out, but I feel like Tony Ferguson is the biggest name who's prime for beating right now.
So if you're Shelby and Maynard and Dana White, you book Ferguson, no question, or would you book RDA, or would you book? So I mean, you're not going to book Felder or Dariush for him. You want to give him a bigger name. Well, Felder's a big name, commentating too, but you want to have him get a win over a quote unquote contending type of dude, or RDA being a former champ. For example, a win over the former champ would be huge for him right now. But if he skips all that and you give him El Kukui, a win over Ferguson could theoretically get him in title shot contention the fastest.
If I'm the UFC matchmakers, I'm sending Tony a text saying, "Did you hear what Islam said?" And then I'm just waiting.
Yeah. Right? He's talking shit about you, man.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for Tony to get back to me. And then I'm like, and then all of a sudden the work's done, probably. Because Tony, I feel like Tony will take that fight. That's what scares me about it. Is Tony knows that Islam's a big up and comer, and so for Tony, he gets to stop the losing streak and take out this guy that everybody's saying is going to be the next greatest thing. And so it does make sense for Tony to take this fight. I just don't like how he matches up in this fight, and I think Islam beats Tony, and so it's a genius call out for Islam to make right now. Yeah, if I'm the UFC matchmakers, I don't know. I think I fill it out with Tony a little bit. But I think Tony will take that fight. I really do. And I think that's a great fight if you're wanting to push Islam. That's his fastest track to the top of that division is through Tony Ferguson. You could do RDA as well. I don't think it's got the pop that Tony has, but RDA will get him is the next best thing if he doesn't get Tony, in my opinion.
Well, if Tony beats him, then you get Khabib back too. Because hey, I just beat your boy. Come on, Khabib, I just beat your boy. Let's make it 2 in a row. So maybe there's another way to get Khabib back. But Jeff, I also want to ask you about Alexander Rakic, man. What a great win over Santos last night. And we know Glover deserves that next title shot. So does Rakic just get the winner of Dominic Reyes and Yuri Prochaska, which is about maybe 60 days away, not even 30, 40 days away?
I don't know. He might want to wait for the title fight. He might that might be a situation where Rocky wants to sit out. And yes, it might be 6-8 months that you're sitting out, but you're guaranteed that title fight. I don't know what he wants to do. And I don't think he really said last night in the post-fight press conference. So I don't know what he wants to do. But right now he's sitting. As soon as that Glover gets his shot, he's sitting there perfectly. And so I don't know. I don't like when fighters sit out, but then at other times I've seen fighters not sit out and lose their spot. And man, it's terrible, right? When that happens. And so I'm on the fence on what to do if you're Rockets. You're right there. You're knocking on the door. Do you just want to wait 6-8 months and then you're the title fight? Or do you want to take a fight in between? It's probably going to come down to if he needs a payday or not, Jim. I mean, that's usually what these things come down to. Can you sit out 8 months without needing a payday to wait for a championship fight? And a lot of people can't.
Yeah. No, that's why Tony fought Gaethje, I believe, honestly. But, and then I look at Dominic Cruz, won on the main card or the main event on the prelims. We talked about wanting to see Cruz Aldo. I think that's the fight to make for Dominic. But then you got Kyler Phillips right below him. Kyler Phillips with a huge win over Song Yadong, who was number 13 or 14 in that division. So maybe you get Dominic Cruz and Aldo, but for Kyler Phillips, you have Merab at 12, and you have Pedro Munoz at 8. You have a Sun Sao, you have Jimmy Rivera. You have a lot of options for him in that next level.
Yeah, with Phillips, because he's only 25 years old, and that was only his third UFC fight, I feel like they could move him. He's going to jump into the rankings this Tuesday, but it's going to be 14th or 13th or right down there. I feel like they can move him kind of up slow and be careful with him because he is only 25 years old, but that also means he's going to be around a long time. There's no reason to rush this kid right now. That was a big win last night. So I think that you move him up just a little bit and give him maybe somebody maybe 10th or 11th and let him slowly get to the top because that division's kind of stacked at the top. I think that Kyler needs to be that next generation. Once all this TJ Dillashaw and Dominic Cruz and Cody Garbrandt and crap plays out, Kyler Phillips is going to be sitting there looking amazing in that division, and he's kind of the next generation, if you ask me. They're going to pass the Dominic Cruz is going to be passing the torch to the Kyler Phillips of the world, man.
What about Askarov after that dominating win over Joe? And Dana White said in the press conference, by the way, no, I don't need to have that talk with Joseph Benavidez. He's cool. So I guess Joe's cool right now with his spot. But for Askarov, man, is he just lined up now? In your opinion, does he just get the winner of Moreno and Figueiredo, especially if it's Moreno, because he's already got a draw against Brandon Moreno, and that's his only blemish on his record, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, I think he gets the title fight in his next outing. What's weird is Benavidez there's 3 losses in a row, and he's going to drop to third because he has a win over Alex Perez at number 4.
Yeah.
And so and so Benavidez. Look, I like Joe. I like Benavidez a lot as a person and as a fighter. I thought he would be maybe on the chopping block, but Dana White said he doesn't need to have that conversation, so he's at least going to get one more fight. As far as Askarov goes, man, wait for that title fight. He matches up extremely well with those guys. Figueiredo's going to have all kinds of problems, and so is Moreno trying to keep him off of him. He's basically, Islam and Khabib just in a different body. He doesn't look like he's that fighter, but he's exactly that fighter from the same area, does the same things, and he stifles you. I think that kid is a terrible matchup for almost everybody in that division. I can't believe he dominated jiu-jitsu like that on the ground. That was amazing.
Amazing. And, Joe is still a legendary fighter. He may be slipping a little bit, but that was a great performance by Askarov, who's a legit title contender. And then I look at the undercard. Kai Kara-France lost to Royval his last time out, but he picked up a big win over Rogerio Bontorin last night. And then I look at Tim Elliott. He's always going to get a fight. But as far as rising contenders, the one person who really stood out to me and really stands out to me as a great prospect, and he just keeps winning, is Sean Brady at welterweight. And I know they're very excited about him. Like, the guy's undefeated. He hasn't, he's only fought 4 times in the UFC, but, he beat Court McGee, and it's at the point where everybody beats Court McGee. But, he beat Jake Matthews, and Jake Matthews is pretty good. I mean, that really got my attention. Not only did he beat him, he really handled him well. And I think that, he's a guy, if they do things right with Sean Brady, I don't know if he gets a ranked guy next. I would say maybe a ranked fighter toward the bottom of the rankings, maybe someone down like I don't know, maybe you let him make a name off of Robbie Lawler. You got Bilal Muhammad with a big opportunity against Leon Edwards. I don't know, you got Luque fighting Woodley, Jeff Neal's out there, Neil Magny's out there, but do you push Brady into a ranked fight next, or do you give him someone else first?
How old is Brady? Do you have that on your screen? I don't have that pulled up, and so I don't know how old he is.
How old is who? Sean Brady?
Yes.
Sean Brady is 28.
Okay, see, he's young too. I mean, they have a lot. They have so much that they can do right now with some of these young guys. I don't know. I kind of like the Robbie Lawler fight, right? Because even if he loses that, it's still a loss to Robbie Lawler, and I like the way he looks in that fight. I don't think he loses that fight, and that's a former champion. You build his name off of him. I agree that he's.
Yeah.
I'm still on Kyler Phillips when it comes to the biggest prospect I felt like I saw on this fight card last night was Kyler Phillips, because he's so dynamic, he's so athletic, he's so fast, and you can just see the brilliance is getting ready to overflow out of this guy. It's just a matter of getting the fights and getting more comfortable in there, and then and at 25 years old, he's going to improve every time out for the next likely decade. That guy really impressed me, and I'd seen him before a fight, but I didn't know how he was going to do in the UFC and against UFC level guys with that style. I was like, are they just going to close the distance when he spins and clinch him up and do all this stuff? No, they weren't. I like Kyler Phillips a lot, but yeah, I agree with Brady is a good prospect to keep an eye on. But yeah, I would start working him into a ranked fighter, ranked opponents. I would start doing both of them that way, but slowly. You're not in a big hurry to do either one of them.
Anybody else that really stood out to you last night that you'd like to see get a nice push here, or at least a nice bump up?
I think Islam's going to get a big. I'll be shocked if he's not in ranked 10th. Whenever I look at the rankings last night,
him and Cruz, because Cruz got an unranked opponent. Yeah.
And then
Kenny, it doesn't hurt Kenny, right? It doesn't hurt Kenny. No, sorry, Jeff.
Not at all. No, I think that was the perfect fight for Casey Kenny. Right, it was a no-lose situation for Kenny in there. Either you look good and you beat a legend, or you lose and you lost to a legend, and we all forget about it because we're all focused on the legend. And you get to come back in your next fight, and we're going to build him up as well. He's been in there with Dominic Cruz, so he's
he won a round.
Yeah,
he won.
So I don't feel like
he won,
might
one
have gained from it.
One of the judges,
he might have
Yep.
Yeah, he might have actually gained stock in that loss, as oddly as that is. But yeah, for me, I think that you called it on the head, and then the Kyler Phillips. I think that we were both high on heading into this, but we got to see the proof. We can be high on people all we want. It's still that unknown when they start going up levels of competition, and they gave him up a level of competition, and he shined so bright on a night that was just filled with stars.
A night filled with stars. And speaking of which, Jeff, I was all happy that I went 8-2 until I realized you went 9-1. I lost on Santos versus Rakic, which you won, and then we both lost on JoJo. We both picked Benavidez.
Yeah, man. I wanted to, and that might have been. I'm not even going to say that. I was going to say that might have been a personal pick because I've known Joe and I like him. But I felt like he was going to win that fight heading into it. I just got that one wrong, Jim. I just called that fight completely wrong.
I went 8-2. I would have won so much money last night. Jesus, I'm stupid.
One of my wife's coworkers asked me who was going to win the main event, and he likes to gamble, and he has a little bit of extra money. And I told him Jan, and he was like, "How comfortable are you with that?" And I was like, "I don't know, 75, 80%." And so he made a little money off of it. So now I look good to my wife's coworkers. But I didn't make anything, Jim.
$500 on Jan would have made you a $450 profit, man. That would have been a nice little, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That would have been pretty good.
Yeah, we did good on our picks last night, man. But I don't gamble, and maybe I need to reevaluate that. I always viewed it as a conflict of interest, but I don't know that it's a conflict of interest.
No, and if you would have bet, Trevin Jones was came through on Mario Bautista. Bautista was a pretty big favorite. So I don't know. I think that the one that I was pretty sure of was Błachowicz. I was really confident about Jan winning that fight, and you and I both said it would be his takedowns and his wrestling and that kind of thing that would win him the fight, and it worked out exactly that way with the takedowns in the 4th and 5th and just holding Izzy down. But I thought it was a great night of fights. Dominic Cruz was an underdog. And, a lot of people were saying, come on, dude. He was plus 105. I don't want to get carried away. Kyler Phillips was an underdog, and I really loved him. I loved Cruz, I loved Kyler, and I loved Jan. If I'd have done a 3-fighter parlay on those 3, I'd be paid today. I'd be doing the show from the deck of my Conor McGregor boat, and then everything would be fine. Not really, but, I'd like to think. So, but I think it was a great night overall. We killed ourselves this week, and I want to say that I'm proud to be a part of this team. Jeff, you and I get to be out in front of this and do the shows, and it's a lot of fun, and we worked our asses off. But our crew out there in Vegas, everybody on the website, Ken Pishna, all you guys over there, Hunter, there's just so much content being cranked out. We killed ourselves this week. We all worked 14, 15-hour days. We put a lot into this, and we really – I'm proud of this team and the work that all of us did as a group for UFC 259.
It's a big event, man. 3 title fights. And like you said, a lot of implications, a lot of work went in, man. It's a big event week. But we're used to it, man. We know how it's going to be. There's going to be bigger events. We're going to be given the even better coverage on that. But yeah, man, I'm kind of happy to bring this event to a close and get it behind me, because I've been obsessed with it for like 3 weeks now, right? And now it's finally over, and I'm just like, get it away from me, get it away from me. It was a good night of fights, though, and it was largely driven by storylines. And then the crazy disqualification that nobody saw coming, right? That was I don't think anybody could have predicted that. And today, Jan's kicking himself in the butt, and Sterling shining that belt up a little bit. Going, maybe I do like this belt, although I left it in the octagon. It was a great night of fights, man. And Amanda Nunes, that was my lock, right? That's what the guy asked me. What's the for sure bet? And I said Amanda Nunes is 100%, but you're not going to make any money, so why even bet on it? And Amanda Nunes, every time she steps in there, we are witnessing Michael Jordan. We are witnessing Usain Bolt. It is legendary. It is historic.
Yeah,
and I hope people look at it like that, because I don't know that anybody else in the sport, because we build up Izzy and we build up all these people, but really and truly, when John Jones and Amanda Nunes step in there, we are witnessing greatness that does not come along every generation.
So hard to be that great. And she's such a sweetheart. She's an incredible person. On top of it, every time I've met her and interviewed her over the years, just an incredible person. And you can't necessarily say that about John. But I mean, I'm really excited. I mean, we got some big fights coming up. Last night, look at the storylines from last night. Błachowicz can never be doubted again. He's been an underdog in 7 of his 9. Are you kidding me? 7. I mean, Anderson, underdog. Reyes, underdog. Izzy, underdog. At some point, this guy has to be a favorite in a fight. At some point, he has to get his respect. Izzy, mad props, man. I love the style bender. Incredible opportunity. Not afraid to fight anyone, anywhere, anytime. Just to try to go up and be a 2-division champ. To continuously test yourself against the best of the best and fight everyone. I love Israel Adesanya. I have more respect for him now than ever, even coming off that loss. The co-main event, the absolute brilliance of Amanda Nunes you talked about. Nothing else needs to be said there. There's the extreme disappointment of the way Jan and Sterling ended, because Jan was looking like a dominating champion in that fight, Piotr Jan. And then Islam living up to the hype. Rakic and Santos was a great fight. Rakic looks legit. Dominic Cruz back in the win column, and just so many, the rise of Kyler Phillips. Askarov looked great. So an incredible night of fights. But Jeff, as we turn the corner, and we're going to have a lot of content come up this week, an incredible opportunity for Bilal Muhammad, who's been around a long time, to fight Leon Edwards. And this is a lower ranked guy for Edwards at number 3. The former bully. Muhammad, we got Eric Gann in that fight card. We got Dan Ige and Gavin Tucker. You got Angela Hill and Ashley Yoder. You got some good fights on this card next week on the 13th. And then the following week, it's Brunson and Holland. I mean, there's some good fights coming up these next couple weeks.
There are. I haven't looked too far ahead. I am glad that Leon Edwards finally has an opponent, right? Because he's too good to be sitting around waiting for somebody to get over COVID. So I'm glad they got him an opponent, and he's going to get in there and fight, because he's talented as hell. I always like I said, Angela Hill. I always cheer for the underdog, man. And she's a girl that was cut by the UFC, fought her way back into the UFC, was on that season of The Ultimate Fighter. And here she is in the UFC winning fights. It's just hard for me not to pull for people in that situation. And it doesn't matter if it's Angela Hill or not. I just like that story, like the Jan. And Izzy talked about that last night, that, he's now a part of Jan's awesome story. The guy was about to be cut. Now he came back and he handed Israel Adesanya his first ever MMA loss. And that's sort of how I feel about Angela Hill. She's writing her own story now. And so I'm always excited to see her. But yeah, we got some bunch of fights coming up, man. They never end, Jim. They never end. That's the thing.
Oh, and then think about the end of it, man. Also this fucking month, March 27th. Are you kidding me? Stipe Francis 2, T-City against Volko, Woodley Luque, and Sean O'Malley against Thomas Almeida on the same card. That's the next pay-per-view. That's the second pay-per-view this month on March. We got 3 weeks till this fight card.
Yeah, I need a vacation, man. It's what I'm getting tired looking ahead, Jim. I'm looking at the fight cards and I'm like, oh God.
You better take your CBD, man.
Yeah,
you better start taking your CBD.
When we end this month with that huge heavyweight title fight, this was the biggest event of the year so far. What was last night, considering the amount of talent that was on that fight card, up and comers, veterans. goats. that was one of the biggest fight cards of the year, if not the most stacked one so far this year. But we still got the rest of the year coming. Like I said, Jim, we're going to open up. The UFC is going to be going to places. They're trying to go to places right now, and then that's going to be a game changer, because as soon as the UFC can start going to places, Jim, what's really going to get crazy is we're going to be having all kinds of events. They'll be throwing a Wednesday night event up. There'll be a Sunday night event. And then we're all going to be like, oh, shit, here we go. Buckle up. But that's the way I see this year ending, is the UFC rapid-fire events in full arenas.
It's going to be a lot of fun, man, seeing the crowd. And Dana was really disappointed in Texas. The governor says we're open, but the mayors say not so fast. And, sometimes it's good to err on the side of caution, but Dana's fucking ready to go, man. We will be first. We will, kill. And then you got, in April, you got Whitaker and Costa. You got Jake Paul and Ben Askren on the same night with Frank Mir and Antonio Tarver. That's going to be, just crazy, right? But when I look at that pay-per-view at the end of the month, man, Volko and T-City, Stipe and Francis, and oh my God, Woodley and Sean O'Malley on that card. This is crazy. We have so much to look forward to, so many great fights. Our cameras will be front and center, Jeff, and good Lord, just Stipe and Francis too. That alone, because they're going to have John Jones in the house. Dana says he'd love to have him there. John's not going to miss that opportunity. He can finally put Izzy in the rearview mirror, and Izzy said, F that N-word. I don't know if you saw that in the press conference last night about John Jones. F that N-word. Yeah. I'll let you fill in the blanks when he talked about John. But the thought of Izzy fighting John, which is, I know, everyone's wet dream, is gone. For now, gone.
Yeah, they have I don't know what to make of that situation, other than it's just a conflict of personalities. Maybe Jones sees Israel's greatness and doesn't like that crap, and maybe it's the same way the other way around. Maybe Israel's doesn't like Jones. Well, like I said, Jones can be disliked for a myriad of reasons. Israel, a few reasons. But it's weird to see those two guys who are at the peak of their career, the peak of their popularity and star power, just going at each other, man. Those dudes do not like each other. I hope someday we get to see those two fight. And I don't know if it's going to be John Jones losing weight or Israel Adesanya having some kind of gland problem and putting on 40 pounds. I don't even care what it is. Eventually, I do want to see those two fight.
Let me ask you a question. If Stipe loses the belt to Francis in a close fight, which I doubt it would ever be a decision, but I didn't think DC3 would be a decision.
Yeah.
But if it somehow, and the first one was, so if Stipe wins or loses by close decision, do you automatically go Jones rematch?
I automatically go Jones is what I do in that situation. And I think that's what Stipe, they do, yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry, Stipe. You deserve it. You're the greatest heavyweight champion of all time, and you should get an immediate rematch. But Jones and Francis would sell so many tickets that they wouldn't pass that opportunity up, and there would be no reason to wait. You still have Stipe rematches on the back burner, but you got to get Jones in there. Yeah. Unfortunately for Stipe, I don't even think that's in question. I'm in the 90 percentile confident that if Francis wins that fight, Jones gets the title shot next.
Well, lucky for you, I don't think Francis has much of a shot. I'm just going on the record. I love him. I love Francis, one of my favorite dudes. I love his power. I just think Stipe is too smart, and we saw that in the first fight. It's going to be more of that. Look what he did against DC in the trilogy fight. But Francis always has that chance to send your head into the fifth row. I can't wait to see what happens there. Big fights coming up. I just want to say thank you to all of you for being with us. We set records this week. Our views on YouTube have been phenomenal. Our engagement on Instagram and Facebook are going crazy right now this week, and that's something that we didn't have for a while. Very, very excited for everything that's going on here at MMA Weekly. I want to, as the guy out in front of these shows with you, Jeff, the two of us get to be here, just take this opportunity to thank our whole team, everyone in Vegas, all the people writing, our editor, Ken Pishna, just an incredible team effort all the way across the board. I'm proud to be a part of this team on MMA Weekly, Jeff, and I'm proud and happy to work with you, man. We've done a lot of shows this week, but, I feel like we represented ourselves well, and we gave the fans something to be proud of.
Yeah, man. I like the MMA Weekly crew, too, and if you're listening to this, get your ass back to work.
Send us money. Oh, I thought that's what you were gonna say. Set up a GoFundMe.
Yeah, no, we're all overworked this week, man. We're all overworked this week, but it was all worth it.
It was all worth it, man. And I'm gonna sleep like a damn baby. We'll be back at it tomorrow. Don't forget, smash that like button, smash the shit out of it. Subscribe, get those bells ringing so that you know when we have new content. Follow us on Facebook, get on the IG, the Twitter, everywhere, all over the website. This content is too good for you not to just be all over it all day. What else are you going to do for the rest of your Sunday? We hope you enjoyed the show. It's UFC Fallout, UFC 259. What a night it was. Jan Błachowicz, the show stealer, at the end of the night with Amanda Nunes and Islam Makhachev, and just an incredible night of fights. And we hope you enjoyed this show here. Powered by CBD Emporium, featuring Level Select CBD. Stay in the fight, MMA.com, for 50% off with the code MMA50, the greatest CBD products on God's green earth. We're talking about tinctures, we're talking about roll-ons, we're talking about creams. 3 levels for 3 levels of pain. CBD Emporium featuring Level Select CBD. Stay in the fight. For everybody at MMA Weekly and my partner Jeff Cain, I'm Jim Grieshaber. We're wrapping it up for now on UFC Fallout. We will talk to you soon on MMA Weekly, the preview show coming your way before you know it for the fight night next week. Until we talk to you again, keep your game tight and your mind right. You know what the rest is. We're out.